right, everyone, welcome back. We are going to go into our next policy session. We have Xander, Desiree, Olivia, and Scarlett. All right, I got all the names. And they are going to talk to us about a bill regarding consent to participate in sessions regarding tobacco and nicotine cessation. Okay, so I'll pass it off to them.
Okay, so is this good? Okay, perfect. We're the Governing Youth Council, and as he just explained, our fancy title is Our Voice, Our Future, Tackling Tobacco through HB 128, and we'll hand it off.
Who we are, the Governing Youth Council, or GYC, is a government-funded, student-led youth group that advocates for tobacco-free communities in schools. Our youth group is comprised of youth from secondary schools in Bear River Health District in northern Utah. Our structure includes a district-level representative group that attends monthly meetings, gathers key information, and shares it with individual schools to help them implement it on their campuses.
Now we're just going to do a little introduction of all of us. So, well, let's cover my name, but I'm Xander Rennemeyer. I'm a GYC leader. I have a big family. I enjoy vacationing and eating. That's the best part of life, is eating. I aspire to be a politician, and my favorite book series is Harry Potter, as well as my favorite movie series also being Harry Potter. That was nice.
I'm Scarlett Williams. I'm just a general GYC representative. I also come from a big family. I'm interested in law and criminal justice. My favorite book and movie series are Twilight and The Hunger Games, and my favorite colors are black and red.
My name is Olivia Kenworthy. I'm a GYC leader. I am 15 years old and I go to Mountain Crest High School. I want to be a veterinarian or a marine biologist in the future. I enjoy video games, and I do competitive swimming for the Mountain Crest swim team. And I love the color baby blue.
And hi, I am Desiree Jo Andrew. I'm a GYC leader. My favorite color is sky blue. I love reading, cross-stitching, and watching movies with my family. And my favorite food is Alfredo pasta. And now we'll just go over why we care. So we love our communities, we're in them, and we want to care about the people who are in them. And we found that even after years of progress, 5.9% of United States middle and high school students, which is 1.63 million people, still use e-cigarettes. Even though it has shifted from cigarettes to vapes, we have seen lots of people still use this, even with the decline over the years, being proven that vapes are not healthy and not good. Our club members have seen the effects of drug, tobacco, and e-cigarettes use firsthand in friends and family, and also strangers. There have been times when I've walked home from school and I will see this guy smoking in his car, or I'll be in the parking lot and I'll find about 1 billion cigarette butts, or even my stepsister found a vape the other day. So we just want to care about our communities and help prevent this from happening to our generation and the generations to come.
I would also like to comment, yesterday I was going on an outdoor walk, and my neighbor, they have a 8-year-old daughter, and she was riding her bike, and she came up to me and said, "Look what I found on the side of the road," and it was just a geek bar. So, especially in the hands of someone that's 8 years old, you don't know what they could do with that, and so that's kind of rough to see.
So the main point of our presentation is House Bill 128, so I'll go over exactly what it is and we can understand it a little better. So what is House Bill 128? The purpose of HB 128 is to enhance tobacco cessation efforts by permitting a minor to consent to and participate in tobacco and nicotine cessation services. So the key point of it is that it would allow youth to access tobacco cessation services without parental consent, whereas before you had to receive parental consent, or the quit line had to receive parental consent before the youth could access it, which means that even youth that want to access it without parental permission, meaning they want to quit but don't want the consequences of getting in trouble with their parents, they don't have that option and are forced to. So it was introduced in the House on January 3rd, 2024. It was passed by the House on February 1st, 2024, and then it was approved by the Senate and signed into law on March 14th, 2024, which We've had over a year of data that we'll talk about a little later in the presentation. Let's see. And why it matters is, as I stated, youth under 18 couldn't access quit lines or cessation services before, but now they can. So, minors 13 years and older can now use quit lines and cessation programs on their own without needing parental consent, meaning not just quit lines, but also accessing school ones that may not have been allowed to be used before. And this change is important because it removes a major barrier for teens actively trying to quit vaping or smoking. It provides access to confidential, evidence-based help, like the Utah Tobacco Quit Line, which is extremely helpful. It empowers youth to take control of their health, especially if parents are unaware or unsupportive. It also helps fight Utah's youth vaping epidemic by making quit resources easier to access. Okay, so current use is 1.8% of U.S. middle school and high school students, approximately 480,000, reported using nicotine pouches in the past 30 days. And we've seen nicotine pouches have become very popular with certain big tobacco companies that are a part of that, have invested millions and millions of dollars into new factories producing nicotine pouches. So nicotine-free vapes is also something we've been working on. They're often called the wellness vapes. And it states that what they like to say is that, oh, you can get your vitamin A or vitamin C just from using a vape, while there is actually no strong scientific evidence that using a vape and inhaling the vapor through your lungs will absorb the vitamins. So it's a potential gateway to nicotine use and associated health risks. We're monitoring these issues. We're actively surveying these new trends with the nicotine pouches and the use increasing. And we actually have some bills that are currently in development a single bill, to address the increasing use of nicotine pouches and wellness vapes among youth, specifically wellness vapes, which we'll touch on later.
Our advocacy journey. So in the 2023 legislative dinner, that is when it sparked our change. Every year we host a legislative dinner with lawmakers and community leaders. Many people from our group will give presentations on things that they feel strongly about. In 2023, a key presentation focused on the struggles youth face without complete access to quit lines. Inspired by this, Republican Representative Thomas Peterson took action and drafted a bill. This bill became the foundation for Utah House Bill 128, expanding youth access to tobacco cessation resources. So the idea origin was obviously presented at the legislative dinner, but there was concerns that arose before that. The bill was drafted by Representative Thomas Peterson. In response to these concerns, HB 128 was introduced in Utah House of Representatives during 2024 legislative session. The bill was assigned to a committee that studied it, heard public testimony, and made amendments. And then HB 128 was passed the House after debate and voting. The bill moved to the Utah Senate, where it underwent similar committee review and debate. The Senate passed HB 128, possibly with further amendments. A conference committee resolved any differences between House and Senate versions. Both chambers voted on the final and agreed version of the bill, and the governor finally signed HB 128 into law in 2024. Meeting with the lawmakers. We met with Representative Thomas Peterson in December of 2023 to discuss additional issues and to provide input on our idea. We maintained ongoing email communication with Representative Peterson throughout the entire process to ensure a smooth progression. We had discussions with other legislators to explain the reasoning behind the bill, which we have a Capitol Hill Day every year, so that's a very excellent opportunity to speak with them. And then obviously Capitol Hill Day, specifically January 24th, we met with Peterson to enforce the idea of good connections in the aftermath of the bill. Some of our testimonies in speaking up this was us at this year's Capitol Hill Day, and the second picture down was our legislative dinner this year. Also, I was given the privilege to speak in the Senate committee meeting on behalf of our bill, where that was some of the roadblocks came in, but we thankfully got those resolved. Even though the bill passed without any failed votes in the House or Senate, we had to change the wording of the bill, which was not much of a problem. Funding can sometimes be an issue, but most of the time we are able to work it out. It's difficult to plan the legislative meetings around their calendars to get the most amount of legislators there because they have very tight schedules. Public speaking nerves are very real. And it took a lot of work, but with our dedication, we were able to overcome these problems by problem solving and reaching out to other organizations and people. When the bill passed, we invited Governor Cox out for an honorary bill signing. And these are just pictures of our group after that. We have attended many different advocacy events, such as the Prevention Summit in Bryce Canyon. We were given the privilege to attend a breakfast at Capitol Hill last year on Valentine's Day, and I also had the amazing opportunity to speak about our journey at that event. We have had the opportunity to meet many different elected officials.
So after and during House Bill 128, we learned a lot of things. We learned how important our work is with the community. As we care about it so much, we want to see the change and we need to act on it. And I'm so glad that we did. We had to learn how to speak in public and get over the nerves. I imagine that's how the in-person people feel right now. But it's important when you're talking to an audience to really get the main gist and be able to get over yourself so that you can spread your message. We have learned the process of getting a bill to pass. We've learned how big tobacco affects the community in a negative way. It's terrible. We've learned how to save lives by educating people and giving them ways to quit tobacco and nicotine. We've learned how to lead, organize, and speak up. And this process gave us a better understanding on policy work and the different steps. So what House Bill 128 did, as said before, it just helped so that people were able to minors were able to access a quit line more easily without needing parental consent. So in April 2024, on this quit line, there was 224 people who were able to use it and that were able to utilize it. And then this year, there's been a 46% increase, and we now have 327 people who've been able to use it. And so that's really just helped people to have that access to get the help that they need to quit nicotine and tobacco and vaping. So reflecting on this bill, again, it's helped it in increasing the quit line usage and helping people, minors especially, who need that help to be able to quit and better their health. Passing the bill was not easy, but we were determined to aid youth in this movement to quit using those harmful products. After this bill was passed, some of us were given the privilege of attending certain events related to similar work, and even speaking on some occasions in hopes to let others know that they don't have to stay silent. House Bill 128 has given us amazing opportunities as well as it has given others hope.
Here's what we're doing next. How we are continuing our work. Advocacy and Leadership Summit in Nashville. We're going in this July. And 3 of our leadership will learn more about advocating and taking action. So we are going to go there and learn about policy work and hopefully bring that information back to our group. Future legislative dinner, meeting with legislators, resource officers, school board members, etc. So we will do more of these legislative dinners to educate them on how dangerous this is and possibly create more bills regarding tobacco and nicotine. The bill on wellness vapes and CBD vapes, we plan on working with Representative Jason Thompson the next session to talk more about that. Youth Leadership Board meeting across Utah, communicating and sharing progress with other advocacy groups across Utah. Here's what you can do to help the community. Look for small ways to change the community, like more non-smoking signs within like parks and stuff. So this past March, April, we went and looked around at parks to do a park cleanup and take count of how many cigarette butts we found. We found a lot, and we also noticed that most of the signs there were not like in places that you can see, or they were destroyed. And you can look for hot spots where there are more smoking and vaping there and talk with groups to make that a non-smoking zone as well and put more signs up there as well. You can meet with decision makers and make connections with them. So like our legislative dinner, you can contact legislators like through their email or something to contact them. You can join prevention activities and educate on how dangerous tobacco and nicotine is, like how we went to Bryce Canyon. You can also join those prevention activities to learn more about that. You can connect with different organizations to help make plans to talk with legislators, and yeah.
Just real quick before we start having some questions, back on the 2 slides ago, we were talking about Jason Thompson. He was going to, well, he already did. He introduced a bill to ban the wellness vapes that I discussed before, ban the sale of them at least, in the state of Utah, and it did not pass because it was introduced late in the session. So that's why we're saying hopefully next year we'll be able to pass it, and he is going to include a extra little enjoyable thing that we can also try to ban CBD vapes as well, which will be helpful in prevention efforts. And I guess we're open to questions now.
Thank you all for that. Vaping is definitely an important issue that needs to be tackled, particularly in schools. The city of Austin, where I live, we just passed an ordinance that says vapes cannot be sold within a certain distance of schools, and so that's definitely something that we've been taking a big look at. A couple questions for you, and any of you are welcome to answer. Can you first tell us, where were youth involved? If you can mark us through the specific places where youth were part of the process, whether they helped create the bill idea. I know you talked a little bit about advocacy efforts, maybe implementation. If you could walk us through that first. Thank you.
So I was 12 years old when I noticed the issue in my school where the people couldn't use the quit lines. I'm 14 years old now, and it was my first year in GYC, and we were going to the legislative dinner, and I had to figure out something to do for my presentation because I was so eager to present. And I noticed that in my school, and I was in 7th grade at the time, there still are kids in 6th and 7th grade using those vapes. And while I never saw it myself, people trying to quit, I know that there probably were people trying to quit with extreme parent guidelines and personal connections with like my sister per se. She has had some struggles there, and so I know that it can be scary for some people bringing these issues to their parents in fear of like backlash or punishment, because some are more extreme than others. And so I brought the idea, researched it a little bit, and then eventually presented it at our legislative dinner. And while it was scary, I'm so glad that we did, because I know that I've had the opportunity to help so many.
And just to add on to that, stand a little closer to it. When she did the presentation, it was Representative Thomas Peterson that he saw it and immediately drafted a bill in the room. And it was kind of like the one this year where it didn't get around till the next session that they could actually pass it. And as we stated in our presentation, throughout that whole process, we were meeting with him. He came and discussed with us multiple times specifically. And technically we weren't advocating because we are a government-funded coalition, so we're technically not allowed to advocate for stuff, but we educated them on what we thought should be changed, but not necessarily forcing them to do it. And he took all of the facts. We didn't tell him we wanted a bill to change that or anything, and he just immediately knew what we wanted. And then from then on, we were able to participate fully in that. And like she said, she went and talked in the Senate committee and discussed, because when it was in the Senate committee, they had a couple issues with the phrase removing parental consent. And I don't know exactly what they changed it to, but they switched it just a little bit, because before that it passed unanimously in the House, which was fantastic. And we were there a part of that, sending emails to other legislators telling them like, hey, this is the facts. Again, not telling them how to vote on it, but just telling them these are the facts if you would like to vote a certain way.
And did you engage any of your other peers in advocacy as well, besides you four?
So yes, actually, our group is, at the time when we made that bill, it was smaller than it is now. It's probably about 15 people. Now we've got 20 to 25. And not only that, but we actually spread it out to all the other schools. And even when Representative Thomas Peterson came to my high school, he went and discussed with other people, asking them about what they thought of the bill, like what they thought they would do, so he could learn even from other people, which he kind of did on his own. I wouldn't say we were the best at going out and telling other people about it, which I think is something we could definitely do, like reminding people that they don't need parental consent anymore to use quit lines, and making sure that people can access them easily.
And when you came up with the idea for the bill, what made you realize that the parental consent to getting these services was a barrier that many students were seeing?
I have personal connections to my sister who was a minor when she was using those products, and just knowing how hard it was for her, because I know that she wanted to stop, but I didn't know that she felt like inferior to telling my parents about it. Just seeing the struggle, because that's someone that I love, and I know that like so many of these people that are amazing and just awesome people at my school or at other schools all around in Utah would have similar struggles. It was just like heartbreaking, because it's like you can be so much, but they just didn't have the opportunity to do that, and so giving them opportunities was just a really big thing.
Great, thank you. You probably had some opposition from parental rights groups, I assume. How did you overcome that?
So when I spoke at the Senate committee, obviously it's like from different public speakers, and there was one lady in specific, she came up and was arguing with the committee about all the parent rights and how the parents should have a say in this, but it was just kind of, for me personally, confusing, because it's like, if your child wants to stop using this thing that's harming their body so much, why would you want to stop that? Because like, if it's, I'm not really sure how to word it, but it's like, it's not going to do them any good. It's just going to keep damaging their body. And so most parents that you would see are going to be supportive of them quitting, but there are going to be that everyone in 1,000, a million, I don't know, that will say, no, I don't want you to stop using, because maybe they're selling it to them, or all these outrageous circumstances and situations. So we did have a little bit of pushback there, and that is one of the reasons we had to edit the bill and the wording. But other than that, from like my personal experience, I didn't see that much parent pushback, just a few. Thank you.
Cool. I have two final quick questions, and then the rest of the panel has some others as well. You mentioned in your application that you were interested in launching a messaging campaign. What do you think that's going to look like, or what would you like that to look like?
So our idea was as like a messaging campaign through especially social media. We don't have a huge presence so far, but we've been expanding it and posting more videos and that kind of stuff. So being able to just spread the word, like I was saying before, we haven't done a very good job at actually informing people they can use quit lines without parental consent anymore. But it's that way that kids can know, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to stay in that just because it's too hard for you to quit and you don't have the resources. There are tons of free resources in Box Elder County, where I'm from. Our school district does a really good job at allocating quite a lot of money towards cessation efforts and services. So we have those things that we want to teach kids about, and like through the schools. The way our governing youth council operates, like we said before, is the people bring it back to their schools. So each school could have like an announcement like every day, and we have our website that we try to spread the word through. We haven't fully fleshed it out yet, but we're on the way there.
All right. And final question for you, based on your experience as students, are there any other health or behavioral issues that you think minors should be able to access support for without parental consent?
Kind of what you were talking about earlier with mental health excuse days. I thought that was not necessarily like full on being like, oh, if you're any age, you don't have to get parental consent for a mental health day, but maybe if you're over the age of 16 or something, you can make that decision yourself. I wouldn't say there's anything else I can think of off the top of my head, but you guys have anything?
On the mental health behalf, I don't know. I think that lots of times you can't, like, obviously you can't tell your parents everything that's happening for fear of embarrassment or neglect or all sorts of different reasons. And so I think that that is something that could be worked on for certain issues, because I know a lot of people are open about it, but mental health especially, like, it's lots of times it's something that's like silent, you can't really see it. And so I think on some parts of that it could be aided so there's no parent consent, but at the same time it could just, some students will abuse it and be like, oh, I don't have to tell my parents, and just skip school, because that is something that you often see in schools. So I think there has to be some other boundaries with that, but I can't really discuss off the top of my mind.
All right, thank you. Aponi?
About last year, I lost a friend to mental health, and I've had multiple friends tell me what they were struggling with, but they are so reluctant to tell their parents. It's like a real issue. Like, all you can really do for them is just be there for them, because it's hard to tell your parents those things, and I just have to talk to them about that.
I agree. Thank you. Aponi?
Sorry. Thank you guys for sharing this wonderful presentation. Coming from being a mom and just knowing that, like, it does suck that in this future generation that tobacco use and vaping is getting really excessive, and it's to the point where it's in elementary schools. Like, just finding out that my son's school, 7-year-old was vaping and doing all of that. So just, it's really concerning as a parent, and just being an ex-vapor too, just, it's good that this is all going into law. My question is, I have a couple questions. So first question that came on top of my head is, why do you think there was such pushback with the parents here in Utah, or like the kids not being, how do I say it? Yeah, like being the pushback with the parents with this bill in general.
From what we've seen with the pushback is that it wasn't so much as an issue with the specific topic, but just more of allowing the wording, removing parental consent, because then parents, I know a lot of parents were worried that that could lead to be like removing parental consent to do all these other things that they may not approve of, or dangerous things, stuff like that. And adding on to when you were talking about 7-year-old vaping, we had in our school district a first grader caught using a THC vape on the bus because they had no idea what it was, grabbed it from their parents, and they were just using it. So I just thought that was interesting.
I've also seen, obviously there are some really extreme parents that are like the helicopter moms and want to know everything about their kids' life. So I think that that is one situation where they might want to have like all of the parent rights so that they can know everything, but that's just from personal experience. So
my other question is, before this bill came into place and you guys were like figuring it all out. How are you guys getting the data from each city or each school district to know like how many of the youths were using vapes or tobacco use to get and needing services to like if they wanted to quit or not? Like how are you guys doing the data and logistics on that? If I
So we mostly get the data through the Bear River Health Department. And so at the beginning of the year, we look at the SHARP data from them, and we look at what steps that we can take to better help the community that way.
And a little more clarification on that is our group, like I said, we're government funded through the health department, so we have access to all that information. Two of our advisors, Emily and Mariella, they're listening right now somewhere, and they both work at the health department, so it's very helpful when we have people kind of in the business that can tell us everything that's going on with all that. And it is public, I'm pretty sure it's public information for the SHARP data, which is extremely helpful when we're trying to, the one we focused on this year is school safety, specifically in parking lots, restrooms, and on the bus. So we instead of our legislative dinner, we had police officers and those kinds of people like detectives and sheriffs come out. And that was like a way that we got to influence people and them to watch the parking lots more strictly by using that information. So it's actually extremely helpful if other people from Utah want to use that. I'm not sure about other states, what they have in terms of data like that, but.
And then a clarification. So I know when you guys were doing the presentation, you guys were saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying 327 people get access to the line that you can call. And that's from this year, correct? Or what year was that when you got?
It was from,
Yeah.
it was from the one where it was the 46 or 47% increase to that new data was the fiscal year to date. And I believe the fiscal year started in June of last year and ends in June around that time. I'm not exactly sure, but then the previous one was also just fiscal year to date, so it was from the June 23 to April 24, and that was, the bill was signed into law, like we said, on March 14th, 2024, so we got a little bit of that over time, but right after the bill was passed, we actually saw an 1,100% increase in quit line use for a couple, I think it was about 6 months, and then it kind of cooled down a little bit, and it was actually really intriguing to see that people right after it was passed knew about it, and that's why I was talking about maybe educating people more that it is accessible for them just because they might not know anymore.
So as, I think for my question is, as of right now, like say for like this month or just the 6 months of 2025, has it been like an increase still, or is it like just steady, or like how is it like right now?
I'm not 100% sure. I would have to look at the data for that because our advisor was the one that helped us with that data. But from what we've seen, it's kind of was a rapid expansion at the beginning, and now it's more leveling off and just being like a slow percentage of people using it, which can be good if use is going down as well as quitline use. But if quitline use is going down and the usage of vapes and other tobacco products is going up, that's not very good. We will have to look into some more options for helping people.
Davion.
Awesome. Well, hello. Super glad that you are in person. I'm excited about that. So I have a question here that I jotted down. How will state agencies and healthcare providers coordinate to implement HB 128 and ensure consistent access to tobacco cessation services across urban and rural communities, alongside making sure that there is consistent access? How will they implement some way for them to know that this is a service out there?
The main thing we talked about was the quit line, which is advertised on government websites, and I believe it's also advertised when you buy vapes or cigarettes. They are supposed to have a sign being like, if you want to quit now, go to whatever this phone number is or whatever this website is. And I know Cache Valley, which is northern Utah for people who don't know, they aren't as good on the having all that cessation services ready and like always ready to go, but we've been expanding and talking to the school districts, telling them, hey, we would like you guys to allocate more money to actually teaching people, and we have tons of signage everywhere at our schools in Box Elder. Like I'd say before, we do a really good job at getting it out there. Every hall you'll go down, there'll be at least one poster, usually 5 or so. They're really good at it, and we want people in other counties, like you were saying, rural counties. Box Elder is pretty rural. We're like a farming area. We only got 20,000 people in Brigham City, which is pretty big, but out towards Corinne, which is a way smaller town, like in the low thousands, if not less, they might not know about all that stuff, especially if they are adults that aren't going to school. Adults can use it as well, not just kids. So just advertising it to kids is something we also have to focus on. And you were also saying something about how do we get them to enforce it. We're not directly involved with telling people about it and forcing them to do it. It's more of the legislature making sure that people are implementing it and they can know that they don't need it. The main government funded quit lines obviously know that they have to let kids use it now. They don't need parental permission, which is a step in the right direction.
Gotcha. You said it's the legislature's focus to enforce that or make sure people are doing it or whatnot. And so are y'all using the department that funds y'all's data to track that, to make sure people are implementing this policy? Or what's the data metrics look like on that?
Kind of. We don't. The hard thing is we haven't really been enforcing it. Like sending out, law enforcement and that kind of stuff. We send out a press release, or whoever sent out a press release saying, hey, you guys need to allow kids to use it now. And like I said, the government funded ones, which are the majority of ones we have in Utah, all do know that they have to allow kids to use it. So I'm not sure. We'd have to look more into how we could enforce it better.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you are saying that there is a focus on implementation hardline? Okay, gotcha. I'm not sure if you answered this question or not, but what funding or resources will be allocated to support the increased demand for tobacco cessation services among minors, whether that's like in a big populated city such as Salt Lake?
I honestly don't know yet. I know they do have quite a bit of funding, and that is a really good point that we should look into seeing if they don't have enough people to work and they're overwhelmed and that kind of stuff. So that, I don't think the bill allocated any money. It was just a blank statement saying, you guys need to stop this. Like, you have to allow kids to use it, that kind of thing. I don't believe there was any money involved.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in and add for the group, since this is like a fun little quiz for you all, and you're doing so lovely. The Office of Substance Use and Mental Health, which is within Department of Health and Human Services, operates the prevention work for the state as far as substance use prevention. I can share our data portal in the chat for folks to take a look at and see kind of all the different data that we have that includes some prevention work. I will say just overall, prevention work tends to have fairly consistent and a lot of funding in comparison to maybe other things that we want to fund. There isn't always money attached to bills at the state level. That being said, we do have a fair amount of federal dollars on the prevention side that help with these types of programs. And so we have a good amount of data that we can use so that we can, the SHARP data that the team mentioned, which is a prevention and needs assessment tool. We can use that data to help inform where our prevention efforts and dollars need to go to. And that's a survey that happens every other year for sixth grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade. So that guides a lot of the work that we do on the prevention side for youth and young adults in the state of Utah.
Yeah, thank you so much once again to the presenters. I kind of have a question that you already touched on. I think Ayan asked about the process of pinpointing that allowing minors to consent to these cessation programs was the main issue that you guys wanted to focus on. So I know one of you talked about how you watched one of your family members go through it and deal with that problem, and you kind of heard from other friends. But was it just kind of like you hearing from other people that this was an issue, or were there like surveys conducted? And how did you ensure that while you were coming up with this as the main issue, you were getting, representation from people all over Utah and youth all over Utah who are struggling with this?
So yeah, I mean, personally in my schools, I didn't really see any of these issues because most of the students will take it to their counselors, and so that's not really like public information, sort of like, I'm not gonna, but I don't have like the authority to snoop on that, I guess. But with my sister, she kind of like I said before, she had struggles with it, and I'm pretty sure my parents did give her a punishment for it, but it wasn't like a horrible punishment. But she did get to quit, and I'm not sure about the representation throughout others in Utah, but she does. I mean, she's not in this group. She is 17 now, but whenever I talk to her about it and other stuff, because we do share another family member that he doesn't really struggle with the same thing because it's something that he really does choose. But even that, him being an adult, it does just affect general lives, and so just kind of like seeing how that affected my life and how my sister has affected hers and the people she loved, including me, it kind of just sparked it, if that helps.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Oh.
And to add on to that, it was mostly personal testimonies from members of our group or family members or friends. We probably could have done a better job at researching it throughout the state, but we don't have a ton of funding, so it's kind of hard to do those types of things, but there's probably some way we could have thought of, but we hadn't thought of at the moment. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And another question I had was, you kind of talked about how you want to focus more on messaging platforms and ways to get more people to bring awareness about this bill that you've passed. So is that kind of your main plan going forward, or do you have any other plans for concrete plans? You mentioned mental health as well. So is there anything that you as a group are looking towards doing next?
So I go to Mountain Crest High School, and I'm currently trying to get the club at the high school to educate more in my high school. So then more of my friends and acquaintances can know more about how dangerous it is. And so currently I'm working with some of the teachers there to get an advisor over it. And I found one, but now I just have to get the club concrete there. And so hopefully with that in place, I can reach out to people more that way and create games and stuff that we can play at schools, education games, I guess, to get the word out that way.
And our plans are pretty liquid right now, I would say, until we go to that CADCA training we were talking about in Nashville, because we hope to take a lot of our experience from that and implement it and learn better ways. We're going through a restructuring right now due to funding cuts. So we're trying to make things a little more condensed, help people to be able to work together more easily, and hopefully not involve as much money. And then also, like I had stated with the wellness vapes, those are something we're very passionate about. The people that are spearheading that movement at our group are not here. They are actually 7th graders. Well, they just graduated from 7th grade, which was pretty cool. And they do a really good job with just knowing all the stuff about that. So we had a picture earlier of the Prevention Day breakfast on Valentine's Day last year. They went to that this year and went and spoke to legislators to bolster support for the wellness vape ban, and that was actually very helpful. We hope to get to that next year. And you got something?
And another thing, kind of just spreading awareness about the newer quitline usage and just the harmfulness of vapes. Personally, at my school, our school resource officer would come in at the very beginning of the year, and he would have this whole presentation on like things like social media, and then he had like one slide about vapes and said, they're bad for you, don't do it. And it's like, but how are they bad for you? Like, most youth aren't just gonna go on their own and research how they're bad for you, so kind of just trying to get more like awareness for that in schools. And also Xander right there, and one of our other leaders got to give a presentation on flavored vapes to like all the teachers in our district and like the administrator, and so just like a bunch of bigger roles in our school district, but just getting the word about the harms of these tobacco products out.
And I don't even know how I, for some reason, forgot to put this in the presentation, but last year, the Utah legislature banned vape flavors and the sale of vape and tobacco flavors, which was amazing. It got held up in the courts for a little bit and then was implemented again, so that's kind of nice. That was a huge, we weren't super involved with that, but as someone that was passionate, well, and still am passionate about banning vape flavors or restricting them, because those are a huge gateway for kids. When they see Sour Patch Kid flavored vapes, they're like, that sounds good, let me try it. And then they get hooked for life, so that's not the most enjoyable thing. And like I said, this last year, we talked about the safety in schools, and next year we're thinking about recentering back to specifically vapes and that kind of thing to be able to, when we were doing the safety stuff, we kind of got a little lost track because we were like, oh, let's talk about vapes, and then let's talk about alcohol, and let's talk about safety. So we want to focus specifically on one thing so we can, especially with funding cuts, more easily combat that issue.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Jessica for some online questions.
Yeah, we just had one of the adult mentors is online for the Governing Youth Council and wanted to just add some pieces. So Daniel, I don't know if Mariella can unmute on her own or if you need to pin her.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you again for giving me a quick moment. I just wanted to clarify on some questions that were asked. So first of all, just going to data, some of the main data sources that we utilize is the SHARP data, the Student Health and Risk Prevention Survey. So we work with our schools, and they allow us to look at more district level data as well if we request. We do utilize some qualitative data, kind of just hearing what the peers have to say. We have also utilized monitoring the future, and just really utilizing our epidemiologist this past year, and so she was a great asset to us to help us just come up with some reports there. And then another piece of data actually that we utilized is the Quitline reports that are put together by the Department of Health and Human Services, their tobacco program. And they are the ones who work with Jewish Health, who kind of leads My Life, My Quit, which is the youth tobacco cessation platform. And they produce those reports for us, which you were able to see on their presentation for 2024 and 2025. And now going to youth involvement, there was a lot behind the scenes, and I loved how the youth mentioned their involvement with the legislators. They were able to speak during the sessions, give kind of like their testimony, their feedback, their story, just to get people on their side, to educate them on the facts, like they mentioned. But I really wanted to highlight our health officer, Jordan Mathis, because he was instrumental in working with us to get the legislators in the same room, working with us, looking at the policy a little bit more, at like what needs to be changed, what needs to be done in order to make this happen, the removal of parental consent. They were able to see that there were some services here in regards to like reproductive rights that youth were able to access without parental consent. So it wouldn't really make sense that they couldn't access tobacco quit services without parental consent. So he worked with them and with the parental rights groups and just collaborated and worked together behind the scenes to see what they could do. One part that is really important to mention is they agreed upon having the coaches who have these calls with the youth to kind of encourage them to have a conversation with their parents, not to just totally leave them out of the loop, but just to encourage them to have that conversation with them and kind of explain what's going on. It's kind of, there's been a lot of lots of policies made across the country, things that they've seen on the news that maybe has sparked a lot of attention there. And as a parent myself, I totally understand, like, wanting to know what's going on. So I'm grateful that they were able to find common ground on that. And then finally, I wanted to talk about how, kind of in regards to funding, we might see cuts in the future. We have had some recently, but we're just trying to focus on risk and prevention factors. That's kind of how we're moving forward with our group, looking at mental health, like how that's a risk factor for substance use, staying involved in school, working more upstream rather than working solely on tobacco use. We can address so many other factors by looking at prevention. So we're just working together and just using really good integration prevention methods to make this happen. But hopefully that was a little bit helpful in some of the questions you were looking for some clarification.
Thank you. And we have like 1 minute left. I know Desiree has been wanting to say some stuff. So Desiree, you want to close us out?
Okay. So it was addressed earlier, and it was brought up that how exactly did this bill pass when there might have been parent fight back? Well, the thing is, while it is minors are able to go on to quit lines without parental consent, it was actually encouraged during these coach calls when kids can go on quit lines and call and ask for help, that parents should be involved, and it's encouraged that they do that. And so that's kind of how we overcame the obstacle and how we gained support for this. Is we're not shunning parents at all, and it's not like that. We're encouraging their involvement, but we want to make sure that people who are using vapes and who are struggling, who need help, are able to get that resource without having unnecessary barriers if they do have that. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree, and thank you to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.